what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you move. Do what you want to, do what you want to. We surrender all to you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you move. Do what you want to, do what you want to. All consuming fire, fall on us. And all consuming fire, fall on us. And all consuming fire, fall on us. And all consuming fire, Amen. Let's praise Him together this morning.
Well, good morning, church. How are you? Everybody doing okay? Great. So nice to see all of you. Why don't you take a second to turn to those around you, say hello, good morning. Through every battle, through every heartbreak, through every circumstance, I believe that you are my fortress. Oh, and you are my portion, and you are my hiding place. Yeah, I believe you are the way, the truth, and the light. I believe you are the way, the truth, yeah, and the light. I believe through every blessing, through every promise, through every breath I take. I believe that you are provider, yes, and you are protector, and you are the one that I love. Yeah, I believe that you are the way, the truth, and the light. I believe you are the way, the truth, and the light. I believe you are. Oh, you are. Oh, you are, you are, you are. Sing this in faith, come on. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, all my fears and doubts, they can all come true because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on, and you meet me here.
And you meet me here today with mercies.
All my fears and doubts,
All my fears and
they can
they can all come true because
they can't stay long when for that this morning. God, we thank you that you are our guidance in the darkness, God, that you are the voice in the noise and the discord, Father, that you are the constant peace and truth in our lives, Father. God, we recognize that and we just believe that this morning, Father. And we thank you for it, God. Let's sing this.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder.
My name is Jenny Ferraris. I am part of the VITA program, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, and we do taxes for people. VITA is a program of the Internal Revenue Service, of the IRS, and here in Knoxville, the primary site for it is the CAC building, the L.T. Ross building, the Community Action Commission. We are basically a satellite of that, and we started it here. Bob Hutchison, our fearless leader, started it here, and he did 50 returns that year. This last year, we did about 600. So the program has really grown and continues to grow every year. We service anybody who wants to come, and we get people from obviously Knox County, church members, non-church members. We do not charge anything to do people's taxes. We file electronically for them. We share their joys and we share their sorrows. You know, some people started coming as a couple and are no longer a couple for whatever reason, but many times it's because one spouse has passed away. And so we grieve with them. So as I said, we share their joy and we share their sorrows, and we develop these relationships. It's wonderful, and that means so much. I can tell you a story that I had recently. On the same day, totally unrelated, we had no idea this was going to happen. In the morning, I had a client who was profoundly deaf. In the afternoon, I had another one at the end of the day. Young woman who had 2 children and sadly was going through a very difficult time in her life. She did read lips, which was great. Got everything ready for her to leave with us because it was the end of the day, we couldn't do it. When I was able to communicate, we do it through a translator on the phone. There's a system, and told her it was done and come on in. She came in the following Tuesday afternoon, and when I explained to her what she was getting back and everything, she grabbed my hands and she said, "You have no idea what this means to me and what this means to my family and how my life is going to be better because of it." Well, my soul is still feeding off of that. So that's just the kinds of things that we deal with all the time. It's so, so rewarding. Thank God that we have the opportunity to do this for people.
Wow. That's incredible, isn't it? I don't know. I've never teared up over somebody else's taxes, but Jenny got me that time for sure. It's just an awesome, incredible ministry, and it's something you don't think about. But to hear her say they did 600 last year, and to see this lobby every day of the week packed out, I can't imagine how many they're going to end up doing this year. It's just really, really cool. Right now, I want to invite our kids and students, kindergarten up through 6th grade, to head out and enjoy a time designed especially for them. We got a great team leading them today, so you really ought to check that out if you haven't before. Well, I want to make sure you all are tracking with Easter. It's coming. It's coming fast at my house. I was pressured into hiding some eggs yesterday, and then they find the eggs, and then you know what you get to do? You get to hide them again. And so we're already celebrating Easter at my house, and my almost 5-year-old is loving it. And so we're already talking about our plans for Easter Sunday. Hopefully you guys are too. All sorts of great services. Lots of opportunities to be together. Holy Thursday and Good Friday are going to be great as well. Love those. Great way to prepare and get ready for Easter. One thing we hadn't talked about, or that I don't remember in here, is our mother-son event. It's called, wait for it, the Springtacular. And it's coming April 21st, 6:30 to 8:30. Put that on your calendar. If you got boys at your house, they're going to love this. Mom's going to love it with them. And it's just going to be a great time. There's more info about that on the news page, and we'll be talking about it more as it gets closer. Well, right now, we'll continue to worship together by taking an offering and just offering back to God a portion of what He has given us this week. Let's pray as we do that. God, thanks for this morning, for calling us together to come and gather together as a group of people. God, not just to worship, but God, to be stretched and to be challenged God, that you might grow us so that we can be the leaders you need us to be in our homes and in our community this week, so that more and more people would come to know the name and the person of your son, Jesus. It's in his name we're praying. Amen.
There I was, empty-handed, crying out in the pit of my despair. And there you were, in the shadows, holding out your hand, you met me there. And where would I be without you? Where would I be? Jesus, you were the voice in the desert, calling me out in the dead of night, fighting my battles for me. You were my rescue story, you lifted me up from the ashes, you carried my soul from death to life, bringing me from glory to glory. You were my rescue story. You are, you are, you are my rescue story. You are, you are. You were out in the pages before I had a name, before I needed grace. Singing songs of redemption, 'cause every time I ran away, you were louder than my shame. And where would I be without you? Where would I be? Jesus, you were the voice in the desert, calling me out in the dead of night, fighting my battles for me. You were my rescue story, lifted me up from the ashes, you carried my soul from death to life, bringing me from glory to glory. You were my rescue story. Never gave up on me, never gave up on me. You were my testimony. Oh, you never gave up on me, you never gave up on me. 'Cause you were my testimony. Yeah. You never gave up on me. Oh God, you never give up on me. Oh, and this is my testimony. You were the voice in the desert, calling me out in the dead of night, fighting my battles for me. You were my rescue story, lifted me up from the ashes, carried my soul from death to life, bringing me from glory to glory. 'Cause you were my rescue story. You are, you are, you were my rescue story. You are, you are, you were my rescue story. You are, you are, you were my rescue story. You are, you are, you were my rescue story.
Hey everybody, welcome to Cokesbury Church. My name is Stephen. If this is your first time with us, I'm glad that you guys are here. Hope you're well. Hope you had a chance to get a little fun this weekend. God has blessed us with a beautiful weekend. I hope you had a chance to recharge and you're ready to head into a brand new week. We're going to be in John chapter 8 today. I'm seeing more and more people go old school and carry a Bible with you. I think that's awesome. And give you a chance to open that up. You can pull it up on your device. It'll also be on the screens. And if you're a note taker, just a friendly reminder, if you have the Cokesbury app, we've got some fill in the blanks for you right there. I find that it helps me stay focused. And so if that helps you, feel free to follow along in that as well. I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember commercials. I'm not talking about like YouTube commercials that you watch for 5 seconds, you can skip it. I'm talking old school, pre-DVR, watch your life waste away in front of you kind of commercials. I don't know what it's like in your life, but the only time I see actual commercials now is pretty much when I'm watching live sports. I record or stream everything, and it's great to just go right on by that stuff. When our kids were little, we often would record cartoons and other stuff that they wanted to watch. And I remember one day we're sitting there, and whatever they were watching ended, and so it switched to live programming. And this commercial comes on. And it was for a particular product called Floam. You remember Floam? Floam came from Nickelodeon, 1994. Nickelodeon's caused parents a lot of heartache over the years with some of the stuff. For us, it was Floam. Our first child was born in 1996, and so it was right at the front end of this deal. It's really kind of weird stuff. It's these little styrofoam packets that you mix with water, and they would become pliable, but it would hold together, and you could make all kinds of stuff, right? So you could make dinosaurs, and if you were creative enough, you could make sandcastles, or you can mold it in the shape of a car. And they were like these little quick cuts filled with these kids. And the kids were all happy and like running through the fields to the sound of music. And everybody's living their best life. And it was communicating that all you need to do to have that quality of life is you got to buy yourself some Floam. And at the end, the announcer would come on and say, hey, if you purchase Floam in the next 15 minutes, we will double your order for even less money, and you'll have twice the fun and twice the excitement. And I can still remember when that commercial ended, our kids were sitting there, and they were perfectly content 30 seconds earlier. But one of them did not even look over his shoulder. All he said in response to the television was, we got to have that. And his brother jumps in, and he's like, Dad, we need Floam. It'll be awesome. We'll never complain again. We'll be perfect children. And y'all, it's like I sat there and watched this Floam-shaped hole open up inside of each of their souls, that only Floam was going to be able to fill that void. And I think about that a lot, because I think even as adults, we tend to have the same tendency. Like if we could be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we look around and we think that the next purchase or the next experience or maybe the next accomplishment, that's going to fill the void in our life. And we convince ourselves, we're just like, man, if I could just get that one more thing, it'll lead to a greater life. Because if you think about it, so many of the decisions we make in life, it's all born out of this desire to get a better life or to go to the next level in life. There's this dissatisfaction, I think, in most human beings that where we are is not where we feel like we were created to be. And so we're always searching, can I just get one more step to get me toward that life? And that leads to frustration and disappointment because we purchased that thing, or we go on that trip, or we have that experience, or we reach that accomplishment. And for a while it's awesome, but it just never really feels like it's enough because it never fills that void inside of our hearts. And it's frustrating. I mean, when you live your life in constant pursuit of the next great thing, it often leads to a place of darkness. And y'all, I don't know anybody that chooses to end up in a place where their marriage is in trouble or finds themselves in so much debt that they're not sure how they're ever going to get out from under that debt. And maybe it's just, I'm going to carry this with me for the rest of my life. I don't think anybody chooses to get to a place where we're alienated from our friends and from our family, or to end up in whatever place we're at with our jobs. And so part of the truth for all of us today is that it's not that we have a phloem-shaped hole in our souls. It's that we have a God-shaped hole. And we can try to fill that void with anything we want to, but it can only be satisfied when we fill it with God. And so today I want to look at the teachings of Jesus. Because one time he said, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. In other words, a rich and satisfying life, a joy-filled life, a life that is peace-laden, that is hope-driven. And we're going to see today that Jesus is the light that can lead us to greater life. We've been in this series called Follow Me, and we've been looking at these stories where Jesus encounters ordinary people and he gives them the same two-word challenge to follow him. And the whole idea is that if we follow Jesus, we can achieve everything that we're looking for in this life. And so today we're going to look at John chapter 8, where Jesus speaks not only to an individual, but he speaks those words, follow me, to an entire crowd. And so here's what he says, John chapter 8, verse 12. Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. Now, I wonder today, how many of us would like to have a little bit more light in our life? Like how many of us, if we're honest, we'd really like to face a little less darkness? Like that would be pretty cool. Or to wake up tomorrow morning to a little less frustration or a little less despair, and maybe wake up to a little more joy and a little more peace and a little more of God moving and working in our life. Listen, the next purchase isn't going to get us there. The next experience that we go on, it's never going to get us there. It's not going to fill that space in your life. Jesus is communicating truth. He's saying, if you follow me, I am the light that leads to life. And if you follow me, I can lead you to the things that you're looking for most in your life. Because whether you realize it or not, only God can fill that space. Now, with that in mind, I've got a couple of thoughts that I think will help us follow Jesus as the light that leads to life. And the first one is this: we've got to step back from judgment. And that's for those of us that are trying to follow Jesus. We have got to step back from judgment. A couple of weeks ago, if you were here, I talked about my favorite dog, Max. And Max died, and then we have these two creatures that live with us now, Wrigley and Sadie, but in between them was a dog named Boone. Now, if I'm honest, Boone was a jerk. We thought it'd be a great idea since Max died if we went and got a blue tick hound, right? Because blue tick hounds ought to be the national animal. And we thought, well, that'd just be great. We've always wanted one of these, be wonderful. No one told us that when you buy a blue tick hound, which I'm telling you something right now, it's important if you want one, they are either raised to be hunting dogs or they are raised to be around humans. And if you don't find one that's been raised the right way, it's going to be a problem, which Boone was for us. This dog had big ears, and he did exactly what he wanted to do. And so we decided very early on, we got to get this dog to obedience training. And now, when I say we, I meant Beth. Like, she went, I didn't actually go. And the whole idea is that you do these training sessions with the dog, right? And they go over basic commands and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of each class, they actually train the owner. And I missed all of that. And so Beth would come home, and we're going to do this dog training session, right? Like, we're going to teach Boone to just stay on his bed because he's a rambunctious dog, and it would be cool if we could just have Boone stay on his bed. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get everything set up, and then we're going to put him on his bed, and then we're going to slowly begin to walk away. And as we walk away, we're going to drop the leash, and then ultimately we're going to be over here chilling for a while, and Boone is just going to be sitting on his bed like this wonderful little ball of ears, and it's going to be great. That's the way it was supposed to happen. So when we get this session started, Beth moves into executive coach mode, right? Because she's been through all the training. And so we put Boone on his bed, and I'm like, stay. And she's like, whoa, you can't say stay. And I'm like, why can't you say stay? And she's like, not supposed to use words. Like, okay, got it. So we put Boone back on his bed. I'm like, and she's like, you can't do that. I'm like, can't do what? Can't do hand motions either. It's like, you're kidding me. What are we supposed to do? Everything I did wound up being wrong. Finally, I said to her, look, will you stop judging my dog training skills? And she's like, I'm not judging you. I just want you to do it the right way. Isn't it interesting that you can't always tell when you're judging somebody else, but you know immediately when somebody else is judging you? You notice that about your life? In John chapter 8, Jesus says he is the light of the world, and if you and I will follow him, he will lead us to life. But then right before he makes that statement, he tells this story. And if you've been around the church, it's an incredibly familiar story. And it kind of illustrates this idea of what he's just said about following him. It's about this woman who's been brought before Jesus because she's been caught in the act of adultery. And to kind of set the stage, Jesus has been teaching in the temple, and it's early in the morning. And so while he's teaching, all of a sudden, these religious leaders show up, and they crash in on his teaching. They're all carrying rocks with them. And they've got this woman who they say they've caught in adultery. And so in verse 4, they say this, teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? Now, there's a lot of weirdness in this story. For example, why are they bringing her to Jesus? If you know anything about Jesus, Jesus was a rabbi and a teacher, but he had no official capacity. Like there was no authority when it comes to the law. Secondly, where's the guy, right? Like, unless there's some new trend I don't know about, it always takes two to commit adultery. But these religious leaders, they didn't care. They were trying to set Jesus up where he could not win. Because they knew if he showed mercy in that moment, he's already got a reputation for hanging out with tax collectors and disreputable sinners. This is just gonna give them more ammo to say that Jesus is amoral, like he doesn't have a moral compass. He just accepts everybody. If he doesn't show mercy and he says, y'all go ahead and stone her, then it would ruin his reputation for compassion. And on top of that, only Rome can order an execution. And so he would have been in direct opposition to Roman authorities. And so it was all a complete setup. And so these religious leaders, they bring this woman. They have no compassion toward her whatsoever. They're completely unaware of the level of embarrassment she must have felt in that moment. All they have is anger in their hearts. So wisely, Jesus doesn't engage with them. In fact, John says he kneels down, he starts writing in the dirt. Now for me, part of the power of this story is that it illustrates two kinds of darkness. There was the obvious darkness that the woman must have felt in that moment, right? Like whether it was right or wrong, her decision, she'd been caught in the act of sin. It was the darkness of her affair being exposed to the world. But then there was the darkness of the religious leaders. And they were all wound up. And they were casting judgment, and they were ready to kill her. And I would argue that both kinds of darkness can profoundly affect our lives in very negative ways. I mean, think about your life for a second. Isn't it easy to get judgmental? I mean, like, isn't it? Take something simple like a diet. A lot of us are often on diets. Let's say you're on some kind of special diet, right? Like you're gonna do low carb, low fat, keto, vegan, all chocolate, whatever. And you're on it. And you're at that place on the diet where you're just absolutely crushing it. You're feeling better. You're starting to lose weight. Maybe you're working out more than you used to, and you're just straight dialed in. And then you go out to a restaurant, and you're there with some of your friends, or you're there with some of your extended family. Have you ever looked around, and because you're doing so good in that moment, you've thought to yourself, I can't believe these people are putting this stuff in their faces, right? It's amazing how 3 months ago, you were those people. But now that you're crushing it, now that everything's going great in your life, and you're completely dialed in for the moment, You feel like you've got a right to judge them. Fast forward 3 months and you might be right back where you were. It's so easy to get judgmental, and it's not just when it comes to simple things. It can even happen in our spiritual lives. So I've got a chart I want you guys to see. It's kind of a spiritual growth chart. And so if you start at -5, that would be like as far from God as you can possibly get. And then right there in the middle, you got a 0, right? So that's the moment that you meet Christ, that you step across the line of faith into a relationship with Jesus. And if you go all the way out to +5, that's like spiritually super mature, right? Like you'd be like the Apostle Paul in the scriptures. Like you've got everything worked out, you're going great. Now, the truth of the matter is that all of us at different points in our life, we're somewhere on that scale. We may be like at a -1, we may be at a +3, or we may right now be at that -5, or maybe we're just right there about to approach 0. I don't know where you are, but all of us, we're all on a different journey. But once you come to Christ, he begins to transform your life. And maybe you can begin to care more not only about God, but about the needs of other people. Maybe as you're growing in your relationship with Christ, you become less selfish. Or maybe you begin to realize that there's some stuff in your own life that you need forgiveness for and you need to let go of. Maybe there's some bitterness that you've been carrying with you that you got to get past. Maybe you start to be impacted by the generosity of God's people, and that causes you to become more disciplined in how you move forward in your life. In essence, you're starting to walk in the light, right? Your life starts to get better. It's not perfect, but it gets better. And here's what I've noticed, being in ministry now for almost 30 years. Usually around year 5, something significant happens. Year 5 of following Jesus, God has done tremendous work in somebody's life, and that's when the temptation starts to creep in. It's the desire to start to look back at all the people who were doing the things they were doing just a few years earlier, and to start to judge them. Say things like, I can't believe they're doing that. Or I can't believe they go there. I can't believe they live like that. I can't believe those people. And we start to forget we were those people. It's so easy to do. There are entire churches that do this. They create holy huddles and they sit around, they look at each other and they constantly talk about how holy they are. And they stop looking back, trying to rescue people who were where they were just a few years earlier. That's not the kind of church we want to be. We want to grow. We want to keep giving each other opportunities. But everything that we do is to inspire us to keep looking back and to be the one that God uses to rescue somebody else who's in desperate need of a Savior. It's never to sit on a throne of judgment and say, you're wrong and you got to stop doing that and you need to clean that up, because we were all that person. That's why judgment never leads to life. It always leads to death. And some of us have been dying a slow death for a really long time. See, that's what's going on in this story. The religious leaders, they catch this woman, which is weird. How do you catch somebody sinning unless you're sitting there waiting on them to sin, right? They judged her unworthy, and they're frustrated, and they won't relent. Verse 7. They kept demanding an answer. So Jesus stood up again and said, all right, but let the one who has sinned throw the first stone. I would have given anything to be there that day. In one statement, Jesus both affirms their idea of the law and he challenges them to be merciful. It's the ultimate mic drop. They are wearing Jesus out about this, trying to trap him, trying to get him to stumble. He's in the middle of teaching when they break in. And they need an answer right now. And so he sits down, he starts to write. And that's not good enough for them. So they demand an answer. And he stands up and he says, look, all right, fine, you go for it. But let the one who's without sin be the one to throw the first stone. And it's boop, and walks away, right? Had to be unbelievable. Verse 9, when the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one. They crashed in. But now that the attention's on them, They slip away, beginning with the oldest. I don't think that should be shocking, because maybe the oldest were also the wisest. And maybe in that moment they realize, you know what? I may not have committed adultery, but I got a long laundry list of stuff I've struggled with in my life. Beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. It seems like there are some people who consider it their religious obligation to be chief judge. That is a pathway to misery. That's not who you and I are called to be. We should instead be grateful for everything that God has done in our lives. And we should be in constant prayer that God will do what he did in our life in somebody else's life. What I have discovered is that the most righteous people use the truth to build people up, not to tear them down. And that is the kind of community we want to continue to be. We want to love people. We want to model as best we can how you live this life. We want to point people to the way. If you want to live a greater life with Jesus, I'm telling you, you've got to step back from judgment. It will be liberating. Just let God be God, and you do what God asks you to do, which is love him, love people, and share hope. It's amazing. Here's another thought. You got to step back from judgment. We also have to step out of condemnation. Step out of condemnation. I read this article about food mistakes that people make, and to be honest, I can relate to it a lot more than I'd like to admit. But I thought it was funny, and so I want to share a couple of them with you. Here's the first one. Bought a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts, parked where there was no one around, and ate in silence. Well, there was some soft moaning, right? Like, I can relate to that. Here's the next one. I love this one. I told my wife I was going to the gym, but went to McDonald's instead. I waited until it seemed long enough for a workout, and when I got home, I poured water on my head and shirt so it looked like I was sweating. Yeah, that's awesome. Last one. I once ate an entire bucket of cheese balls. Then I sat in my orange shame, reflecting on the choices I had made. I love it, man. Here's the deal. Shame is a real thing. And shame can hang over our lives. And there's a certain sense of darkness that I think is unique when you live your life in shame. And this is the point where I would suspect for some of us, I've stopped preaching and I've started meddling. Because Christians carry a lot of shame with them as well. So whether you're a -5 or you consider yourself a +5, shame is legit. Part of what Jesus came to do is free us from the darkness of condemnation. John 8, verse 10. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, "Where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said, and then here it is. Jesus said, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." Notice that the only person in the story who had every right to throw the first stone, who lived a perfect life, Jesus, chose not to. Notice, in fact, that it was Jesus that stood between this woman and her accusers. He didn't pile on. He didn't point a finger. He just spoke life into her, and he called her out of her shame. And he does the exact same thing for us. Because the truth is, we've all got accusers. We've all got people who have told us we are no good, or we're nothing, or we'll never be anything, or we're dumb, or we're silly, or we're stupid, or we're ugly, or we're fat, or we're too skinny, or just fill in the blank with whatever you want to. And the problem is that sometimes those voices become very powerful in our lives, and they keep playing over and over and over again in our heads and in our hearts long after they are spoken to us. And so listen to me, if there's one thing I could say to encourage you today, it's that you cannot allow what others say about you to drive your life. You are giving them way too much power. They don't even know you most of the time. What people are posting or what people are tweeting or what people might be saying about you behind your back, they're not in your inner circle. If they were in your inner circle, they would love you and they would care for you and they would respect you enough to say it to your face. And if somebody says it to your face, even then, take what you can learn and then dismiss it. But it is high time for us to stop letting those voices have so much power in our lives. You may be thinking, well, Stephen, how do I get past that voice? Because it's really loud right now. Well, you drowned out the voice of the critics by allowing God's voice to speak louder into your life. Well, how do I know what God says? You got to get in your word. Because there are just hundreds and hundreds of things that God says about us that we need to cling to. The more we get into God's word, the more we realize that we are more than conquerors, that we are more than the mistakes we've made, that we are more than what anybody could ever say about us, that we are his sons and daughters, that we have been forgiven, that we've been offered a new life, that we are transformed and been made into new creations. It just goes on and on and on. And so we've got to get ourselves to a place when that voice speaks up and tells us that we're unworthy, we immediately go, no. God says I am worthy. And that voice tells us, well, you've made too many mistakes. Then God reminds us, no. There's no mistake too great that the blood of my son cannot cover. And we just get ourselves in that motion, in that rhythm in life where we're stepping out of condemnation and we're stopping giving so much power to the voices that speak into our life. Clearly, I'm preaching to myself because y'all are looking at me like I'm crazy, right? I mean, come on, y'all. This is a community of the redeemed faith. We should not be afraid to celebrate and to give God a hand clap because the truth of the matter is, it ain't about us. It's all about him. It's what Jesus is trying to get this woman and these religious leaders to see. And so we've got to learn to hang on what God says about us rather than what the critics say. Jesus says he does not condemn the woman, and then he says something very powerful. He tells her to go and to sin no more. Now, you may think, well, Stephen, that's it right there, man. You're wrong. He told her to go and sin no more. He judged her. No, he didn't. If that's what you think Jesus is saying, you've missed the whole point of the story. What Jesus is saying is, I want to give you an invitation to go and sin no more. In other words, I'm going to give you an invitation to get really honest about yourself. It's the same invitation he would give all of us. To get honest about our anger, to get honest about our bitterness, to maybe get honest about our issues or our habits or the sin that we struggle with, to be honest about our sexual past or our temper and how it presents itself, to get honest about how we love other people or what we think about serving other people. What he's saying is if you'll start getting honest about these things in your life, if you'll go and sin no more, you'll start walking more and more in the light. And you'll begin to experience the life that you've been chasing after your entire life long. See, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And if you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you'll have the light that leads to life. Now let's get personal. What might that look like for you? If you were to step into the light, how different might your week be if this week when you go out and you see a couple of parents and their kids are losing their mind at Walmart? If you just step back from judging them and you use that as a clue that even right there, you're just gonna stop and you're gonna whisper a prayer. God, I know what they're going through because I've been there. Would you just give them grace to get through the moment? When you're tempted to judge somebody this week, if you just step back and realize that maybe where they are is where you used to be, and by God's grace, you've stepped into a new reality, and so maybe you're just simply saying, God, I need you to do a work in their life like you did in my life. Maybe you're at school and somebody's being bullied. Rather than judging the bully, what would happen if you just went and ate lunch with that kid? who is being bullied. Maybe you just make friends with them. What I have found in my life is that bullies cannot handle accountability. And when you circle up around somebody that's being bullied, they have a tendency to want to run away and hide, because in their soul, they're very weak. And they act out because they're desperate for attention. And when you take that attention away from them, they don't know what to do. You could be a difference maker in somebody's life this week when you go to school. I don't know what it is, but it'd be interesting if we all just committed to 7 days where we're not going to judge anybody. Not how they're driving, not how they look, not how they're behaving, not how they're living their life, not the decisions they're making every day. If we just step back and just say, God, that's your job. And for this week, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do the best I can to love them. And I'm gonna do the best to model the way you live. And I'm gonna try my best to point the way. And I'm gonna trust that you're gonna do in their life what you did in my life. Do you think that would make your week different? Yeah, guarantee it would. What about those of us that maybe we haven't stepped into the light? We've been coming to church for a long time, but we haven't stepped over that line of faith. I think today's the perfect day to do that. It's not nearly as hard as you might think. I know here in the South, we've all got experiences with church people. Some of it's good, some of it's pretty tough. But all you got to do is just say, Jesus, come into my life. You can do it right now where you're sitting. You have to raise your hand. You don't have to come down front. You can just be you, because it's about you and God. It really is that simple. Just, Jesus, come into my life. And I know you may have to spend the rest of your life having conversations with God about everything else in your life, but it always starts with that first step of, Jesus, come into my life. You can say that right now, and he will. Doesn't mean that your life is going to be perfect, but what it does mean is you're never going to be alone again. So I hope just 2 weeks before Easter, you'll make that decision today. It's just, Jesus, come into my life. I want you to know the altars of our church are always open. We're going to stand and sing one more song, and I'm going to invite you to stand to your feet, so if somebody wants to get out, it's a little easier to leave their seat. But y'all, this is your time and this is your moment. So you come now in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
And I am yours. I am yours for all my days. Jesus, I am yours. Just lift that up, church. I am yours. I am yours for all my days. Jesus, I am yours. Sing, I am, and I am yours. I am yours for all my days. Jesus, I am yours. Father, I am yours. I am yours for all my days. Jesus, I am yours. Sing, love came down. And love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. And I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountain high, valley low. I sing out, remind my soul that I am yours. I am forever yours. Sing, love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountains and valleys, mountain high or valley low. I sing out, remind my soul that I am yours. I am forever yours. Amen. Let's thanks to you for that message one more time. Yeah. We love you. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Go enjoy some of this sunny weather. And we'll see you next time. Bring somebody back with you.